But let me start at the beginning because this wasn't about one dinner. This was about 34 years of being invisible in my own family. My name is Rachel and I'm the older of 2 daughters. Growing up in our Boston suburb, I learned early that achievement without recognition is just noise nobody wants to hear. My sister Courtney was the star, cheerleader, homecoming court, the girl who could walk into a room and make everyone turn. I was the one in the corner with a book, the one teachers praised and parents forgot to mention at dinner parties. When Courtney barely scraped through high school, my parents threw her a graduation party with a DJ and a chocolate fountain. When I graduated summa cum laude from Boston University, they took me to dinner at the Cheesecake Factory and spent the meal discussing Courtney's new retail job at Nordstrom. "She's so good with people," Mom said, beaming. "You were always more solitary." The word stung, but I swallowed it. I'd learned to swallow a lot. Law school was brutal. I worked as a paralegal during the day, studied until 2 a.m., survived on coffee and determination. I graduated in the top 10% of my class from Suffolk University Law School. My parents came to graduation, sat in the back and left before the reception because Courtney had a crisis. Her boyfriend had broken up with her and she needed them. I stood alone in my cap and gown watching families take photos and told myself it didn't matter. Achievement was its own reward. I didn't need validation. I spent 5 years as a prosecutor. I won cases that made the local news. I put away violent offenders, defended victims who had no voice, worked 18-hour days because justice didn't keep business hours. My parents never asked about my work. At family dinners, when I'd mention a case, Mom would interrupt to ask Courtney about her latest dating app match or her opinions on the new Starbucks flavor. Meanwhile, Courtney floated through jobs. Sales associate, marketing coordinator, social media consultant, which meant she posted photos on Instagram and called it work. Each time she quit, Mom and Dad would nod sympathetically and help with her rent. Each time I got a promotion, they'd say, "That's nice," and change the subject. What they didn't know was that I'd been helping Courtney too. When she maxed out her credit cards, $12,000 in designer clothes and bottomless brunches, I paid them off. When she got evicted for missing 3 months of rent, I covered the debt and the deposit for her new place. When she wrecked her car and couldn't afford the repairs, I handled it. Over 7 years, I'd quietly given her $68,000. She never said thank you. She never acknowledged it. And I never told our parents because that's what I thought family meant. You help silently. You don't keep score. 2 years ago, I was appointed to the Massachusetts District Court bench. At 32, I was one of the youngest judges in the state. The appointment made the newspapers. The governor's office issued a press release. Legal colleagues sent congratulations. My mother called and said, "That's wonderful, honey. By the way, can you talk to Courtney? She's been feeling down because her Instagram engagement is low." I stopped expecting them to celebrate me. I learned to carry my victories in silence, like secrets I kept even from myself. 6 months ago, Courtney started dating Marcus Chin. He was a senior partner at a prestigious Boston law firm, the kind of place that handled corporate litigation, mergers, constitutional law. Handsome, successful, from a wealthy family. Courtney couldn't stop talking about him. "He's brilliant," she gushed at a family dinner. "He went to Harvard Law. He's argued before the state Supreme Court. His firm is one of the best in New England." Mom beamed. Finally, Courtney's found someone worthy of her. I said nothing. I'd learned that silence was easier than pointing out that Courtney had told Marcus she worked in marketing leadership, when she was actually unemployed and living off the money I'd been sending her. Over the months, I heard more about Marcus. How he'd taken Courtney to Martha's Vineyard. How he'd introduced her to his senior partners. How he'd proposed with a ring that cost more than most people's cars. The wedding was set for June, a lavish affair at the Four Seasons with 200 guests. I was invited, of course. Courtney made a point of telling me I could bring a +1, if you ever meet someone. The comment cut, but I let it go. I'd become expert at letting things go. Christmas arrived with the first real snow of the season. My parents were hosting dinner at their home in Wellesley, a sprawling colonial they'd bought with help I'd given them years ago, though they'd never acknowledged that either. 49 people were invited. Extended family, friends, neighbors, colleagues of my father's. And Marcus would be there. His first major family holiday with the Hendersons. I drove from my condo in Cambridge, listening to classical music, mentally preparing for the usual dynamics. Courtney would be the center of attention. Mom would fawn over Marcus. I would eat quietly, answer polite questions briefly, and leave early. I wore a simple navy dress, pearl earrings, minimal makeup. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention. The house glowed with white lights and evergreen garland. Inside, the air smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. Relatives milled around with wine glasses, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Courtney stood near the Christmas tree in a red dress that probably cost what I spent on groceries in 3 months. Marcus beside her in a tailored suit. They looked like a magazine spread. Perfect. Polished. Untouchable. I slipped in quietly, hung my coat, and made my way toward the kitchen to help with anything that needed doing. My usual role at family gatherings. Rachel. Mom's voice cut across the room, artificially bright. Come meet Marcus properly. I turned. Every eye in the room swiveled toward me. I felt the weight of their attention like a spotlight I never wanted. I walked over. Marcus extended his hand, his smile professional but warm. Rachel, I've heard so much about you. I shook his hand. Nice to meet you. Marcus is senior partner at Whitman and Associates, Courtney said, her voice carrying that edge it always had when she introduced me to someone impressive. The edge that said, see what I landed? See what you'll never have? That's impressive, I said neutrally. We stood there for an awkward moment. Then Mom arrived with her favorite weapon, comparison disguised as concern. Rachel works so hard, Mom said, patting my shoulder in a way that felt more like a dismissal than affection. She's always been the serious one. Not as social as Courtney, but she tries. I felt the familiar burn in my chest. I swallowed it. Dinner was called. We moved to the long dining table. Mom had rented extensions to accommodate everyone. I was seated near the middle, surrounded by cousins and family friends. Courtney and Marcus had the seats of honor near my parents at the head of the table. The meal progressed through the usual rhythms. Turkey, stuffing, stories about family vacations and holiday memories. I contributed when directly asked, otherwise stayed quiet, cut my food into small bites, and waited for the evening to end. Then after the main course, during that lull before dessert when wine flows freely and conversations get louder, my Aunt Linda asked Courtney about wedding planning. It's coming together beautifully, Courtney said, her hand on Marcus's arm. Marcus has been so supportive. And it helps that I can focus on it full-time since I'm between projects right now. Between projects. The euphemism made my jaw tighten. And what about you, Rachel? Marcus asked, turning toward me with genuine interest. Courtney mentioned you work in the legal field? Before I could answer, Courtney laughed. That performative laugh that always preceded something cruel. Rachel? She's had a rough few years actually. Career hasn't really taken off the way she hoped. The table quieted slightly. I felt heads turn. She's struggling a bit, Mom added, her voice dripping with concern that felt more like pity. But we're all hoping things turn around for her. I set my fork down carefully. My hands didn't shake. I'd learned long ago how to control my physical reactions even when my insides were screaming. Marcus's brow furrowed. I'm sorry to hear that. The legal market can be tough. What kind of law were you practicing? Oh, she's not really practicing anymore, Courtney said quickly. It didn't work out. I could feel every eye on me. The weight of 49 people watching the family failure be discussed like a cautionary tale. Marcus looked directly at me, his expression shifting to something I couldn't quite read. What do you do now, Rachel? The room fell completely silent. Even the background music from the kitchen seemed to fade. I could hear my aunt's wine glass touch the table. The crackle of the fireplace in the next room. I met his eyes. I didn't smile. I didn't perform. I just answered. Judge. One word. Final. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my father's breathing 3 seats away. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry. I'm a judge, I said evenly. Massachusetts District Court. His face changed instantly, recognition flooding his features. Judge Henderson? You're Judge Rachel Henderson? Yes. He leaned back in his chair, something like shock crossing his face. I've read your opinions. The Commonwealth versus Morrison case. Your ruling on evidence admissibility was cited in our appellate brief last month. I nodded. I remember that case. Courtney's face had gone completely white. Mom's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Marcus turned slowly to look at Courtney. You told me your sister was struggling. You said she'd failed at her legal career and was working retail. I didn't, Courtney stammered. You told me you were the only successful one in your family, Marcus continued, his voice quiet but sharp. You said your sister was directionless and you'd been helping her financially. My father cleared his throat. Now Marcus. Is it true? Marcus asked, looking at me directly. Has Courtney been helping you financially? I could have stayed silent. I could have let it go the way I'd let everything go for 34 years. That I spoke. No. I've been helping her. And our parents. Rachel, don't be dramatic, Mom said quickly. I reached into my purse. The one I'd brought because I'd planned for this moment, in some deep part of myself that had finally had enough. I pulled out a folder. Placed it on the table. Bank records, I said calmly. Showing $68,000 in transfers to Courtney over 7 years. Credit card payoffs. Rent. Car repairs. Emergency loans. I pulled out another document. And mortgage payment records showing I've been covering $3,000 monthly for Mom and Dad's house for the past 4 years. The folder sat on the table like evidence in a courtroom. Because that's what it was. Marcus picked it up. Read the first page. Then the second. His jaw tightened with each line. You've been supporting your family, he said quietly. While they told me you were the one struggling. Yes. He turned to Courtney. His voice was ice. What else did you lie about? Marcus, I can explain. Your marketing leadership position? She went pale. You told me you managed a team of 12 people. You told me you'd graduated with honors. You told me, he stopped jaw working. How much of what you've told me is true? Tears started streaming down Courtney's face. Real ones this time. I just wanted you to see me as your equal. I wanted to be someone you'd be proud of. So you lied. He stood, dropping the folder on the table. You lied about your career, your education, your family, your finances. You built our entire relationship on a foundation of lies. Please, Courtney whispered. I love you. Love doesn't begin with deception. He looked at me. Judge Henderson, I apologize. Your sister grossly misrepresented you and your accomplishments. It's fine, I said. It's not fine. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Set it on the table in front of Courtney. I can't marry someone I don't actually know. Someone who's lied about everything that matters. Courtney grabbed for his hand. Marcus, please. We can work through this. He pulled away gently but firmly. No, we can't. Because I have no idea who you actually are. He walked out. The front door opened and closed. 49 people sat in absolute silence. Mom found her voice first. Rachel, how could you? You've ruined your sister's life. I answered a question honestly, I said. That's all. You could have stayed quiet. I've stayed quiet for 34 years. I stood, gathered my folder. I'm done staying quiet. Dad leaned forward. You're being selfish. Family protects each other. Family respects each other, I said. Family acknowledges each other. Family doesn't lie about each other to make themselves look better. I walked to the coat closet, pulled on my coat. Behind me, I could hear Courtney sobbing, Mom comforting her, relatives whispering. I drove home through the snowy streets, my hands steady on the wheel. My phone buzzed repeatedly, texts from my mother, my father, cousins taking sides. I silenced it. That night, I sat in my condo overlooking the Charles River, drinking tea, watching the city lights reflect off the water. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Marcus. I did some research. Your career is remarkable. Your family should be proud. I'm sorry they made you feel otherwise. And thank you for your honesty tonight. It saved me from a terrible mistake. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The next morning my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She said Courtney was devastated, that I'd destroyed her chance at happiness, that I owed her an apology. I deleted the message. 3 days later, an email from Courtney. Long, rambling, full of accusations and then desperate apologies. She called me jealous, then begged me to call Marcus and fix this. I archived it without responding. 2 weeks later, my father left a voicemail saying I was no longer welcome at family events until I learned to be a team player. I saved the voicemail. Didn't call back. Here's what I learned that Christmas. Some families don't celebrate your success because your success exposes their narrative. They need you to be struggling so they can feel superior. They need you to be the problem so they don't have to examine their own behavior. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth. Not vindicatively. Not cruelly. Just clearly. I didn't destroy Courtney's engagement. Her lies did. I didn't ruin Christmas dinner. Their years of dismissing me did. I didn't create the problem. I just stopped pretending it didn't exist. A month later, I received a formal invitation to speak at a legal conference about evidence law. The invitation came to my chambers, addressed properly. The Honorable Rachel Henderson. I accepted. If you've ever been dismissed by the people who should celebrate you, if you've ever been called the failure while quietly holding everything together, if you've ever stayed silent while lies were told about you, I want you to know something. Your silence doesn't protect them. It just teaches them how small they can make you. Telling the truth isn't cruel. Hiding it is. And families built on deception always collapse eventually. The only question is when and who gets crushed in the rubble. I chose to step aside before the collapse. I chose honesty over false peace. I chose myself. And that's not selfish. That's survival. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't a scream. It's one word spoken clearly in a room full of people who've spent years trying to make you invisible.